Alright, so it's time to get stuck into this mess of a quarter. I've put down some layout fluid down and then gave it a block with just some 120 on sort of like a speed file. I didn't want to hit my body file on it because it's really, because of how thin it is, I don't want to take any material away from it. So how we're going to approach this is I can see from where I blocked it where all the highs and lows are, and there's a crease running sort of down that way. There's a tiny one back here, and then we've got that big sort of mess there, and then when we've done the shrink as well. So that's still really low, and I knew that anyway, but the biggest battle with this is going to be controlling the metal, purely because as you work it, it gets thinner and thinner and thinner, and it expands. So like what you do, if you sort of think of it like it's like pizza dough, as you push it down, it gets thinner, and then it grows in size. And same with metal, as you dolly it, it's squashing it, so it needs to go somewhere. So all your strong points are swage lines and ends of panels. So as it expands out, it pushes pressure against them, and that excess material has to go somewhere. It either goes inwards or it pops out. That's why we do the shrink, to shrink it back into sort of shape. So I'm going to be using also not just a planishing hammer, but I've also got a shrinking hammer that's got a bunch of little sort of nodules in there which indent into the steel to keep the strength there. And same as a slapper, it's not a smooth slapper, it's just it's a bastard file made out to be like a slapper, and those ridges actually do the same principle as the shrinking hammer. It puts little ridges in the steel and keeps it all taut. So there's going to be multiple shrinks in this over the course of doing the whole thing, and I'll have to break it down into videos, multiple ones, because there's going to be a good maybe 8-10 hours in this section I'm sort of anticipating. So I'll just do it over the course of the whole heap. But at the moment we're going to start from this top corner and fan down to this area here and push the steel down, purely because I've got two nice strong points here and one up there, so the steel won't go generally past those points. It won't really wrap around corners or anything like that. So I'll use that to my advantage when I'm pushing steel, and I'm going to try and push it all down to here, because once I get down to this section, I'm just not sure how it's going to react. It's quite low and it's quite stretched, but I can push material down to this section and trying to keep it away from going over the top of the arch, because it's really good quite there actually. So except for this one little crease, but I don't want to push it back into the far quarter. I want to try and contain it. But as I'm going along, I've got a contour gauge, which I've taken measurement off the other side, and I can sort of track how I'm moving. It'll show how low I am in spots or high or anything like that. And over the time, we'll also put down more layout fluid as we go along, and blocking it as I'm going with just a 120 on the block. As I'm sort of moving metal, I can sort of see where the highs and lows are. Highs will always be really, really shiny, and hopefully the lows will stay in that blue color and slowly pull out. So we're using just a hammer and dolly with a planishing hammer to start with up in here. It's low here. Also, a lot of people don't seem to understand, I've noticed that the way to hold a dolly, the curved side is actually the contact side, not the flat side. So some people have sort of mentioned that they thought that was how it fits in your palm. It's not the case, because that contact curve is curved because no panel's straight, 100% straight. So as you're dollying, you can sort of rock your wrist until you get your dexterity. You'll find where it is in relation to the hammer, because you're not actually looking at it. It takes time and practice. You can always just use an old panel like we do with the apprentices at work. Just put a big din in it and practice, because it does take time to get your coordination. And also, as you're rocking, you can fan, your hammer and push metal. Metal reacts in it really, you can control it as much as you want. It's just a matter of practice. So I'm going to start up here. Like I said, I'm going to fan it down into this area here and try and push some of this metal. So what we're going to do is, there's two types of sort of dolly work you can do: on dolly and off dolly. So on dolly is when the two are contacting between the metal, and off dolly is when they're sort of side by side in relation to the panel. Using off dolly is when you're pushing up on a low and tapping down the high, and you're sort of transferring sort of from one to the other. On dolly, you're sort of putting pressure on the low and if there's a high around it, which generally there is, you tap it down and slowly tap up the high. You're not hitting from the other side. People also think you're putting a dolly on the opposite side and hitting out. It's not the case. You're actually slowly working that low out by using your dolly and your hammer, and slowly it'll pull out. So I've got a little low here. If I just get I'm using my planishing hammer at this stage. I'll move into my shrinking hammer once I get down here. So I'm putting pressure just in behind it, and you'll hear the difference between if you're missing it or not. There'll be a real distinctive ring bell when you hit steel on steel between. And you sort of want to, I'm going to be sort of fanning downwards. You know, I'm really lucky I've got access behind, so I can really sort of push down. Hopefully it sort of the noise transfers through and you can hear what I'm talking about. It's got a really distinctive sort of sound. I'm just working that low up. I've got sort of a high spot here, so I'm sort of trying to lift that low with this sort of metal pushing into it. You're putting sort of a medium pressure on it. You're sort of wanting to put pressure where you can sort of see the metal moving, and as you're hitting that high, it'll slowly transfer into that low. You just keep feeling with your hand. Always keep a flat hand. Using your fingertips won't tell you anything. You need to follow through from your fingertips into your palm. That way you get a full feel of the panel. Otherwise you think you might have it. And also always feel from the opposite way too. It might feel right from this way. If you stand with your body the other way facing, you get a different feel for it, because like I said before, no panel is straight, so you need to feel from sort of like an asterisk. You know, you'll get a full feel for the panel then as you're sort of working it. So I'm still working on this section here. As you can see, I'm sort of sweeping. I'm sweeping down because I want to push metal into this section here. I'm just sort of feeling as I go. It's still low. It's going to take a bit of work. You know, it's quite low, but I'm trying to get right up in that section up in here. It's starting to come up now. You can feel it starts changing shape, and then you know how to sort of hit for the next time. I'm just going to hit it really lightly with just a small bit of paper on a block, just so I can see how it's going. It just sort of highlights where it's still really high. It'll turn shiny. Same principle as a body file, but like I said, I'm trying to keep away from taking material off by using one of them. It's starting to play. It's getting there. But what I'm going to do is switch to a slapper, because I can sort of feel I'm starting to slowly lose a bit of feel to it, and I want to get that back. So same thing. Same with the, you know, you're still using the dolly, but with this case you can sort of really push. Can't see from the bit, but there's little sort of ridges in there, and that's keeping that nice and tight. You know, I can see when you really look down the panel just how much that's bulged out there from going in. So like I said before, if there's an in, there's generally an out. The material's got to go somewhere. It stretches that inwards material where it's been hit, which pushes it out. And controlling that's going to be my biggest battle. But that's right down the line at some point. I'm really sort of trying to get this section done first. Like I said, using these sort of swages as a a safe point too, because it will help me control it. So I'm just going to go into where I did that shrink, because this here is starting to play a bit. And I just want to see how the two play together, because they're all going to join at one point. And it's controlling that it's going to be the battle. Starting to dolly out nice actually. It's getting there. It's not sort of getting out of control or anything, because you can lose control of it really quick if you're not careful. It's always just one tap too far, and you'll know it as soon as you do it, because it'll just suck in on you. So you can see I'm sweeping it. You'll understand once you start doing it yourself what that sweeping action can do, especially when you've got sort of a mess like this. I'm just trying to really make sure the whole time that I'm not losing that shrink we did. It'll go at some point, I know it, especially when I start getting down further. And we'll just shrink again. It could take one more shrink, it could take 10 more shrinks, It's a slow process when you're talking an area this big. It's there's a lot of work involved in it to get it straight. This will have a really tight wipe of filler through it. That's just how it is. And like I've said before, it's filler's an aid. It's not a solution. Which was done in the previous repair. It's just bogged over. But nowadays that filler it's not like it used to be. It's even high-end builds have it now, it's just to get it nice and crisp and lose the waves, and it's blocked really well. So don't ever be afraid to use it, just don't overuse it. That's how it got its name to be bad in the first place. So that's about it. I mean, I'll break it down into different sections, because like I said, I've got about 10 hours-ish in this, I'd say. And I'll just upload them as we go. So I'm also using the Easy Beat here to help a little bit. As I'm using it, it's putting a little bit of heat in there too, so it's sort of helping me control that stretch a little bit too. And it's just something. It's sort of you just play as you go. What's sort of working, what sort of isn't. It's starting to come out nice with the Easy Beat. I'm not using it with the slide sort of style thing. I'm just using it just to pull a little bit. So it's just sort of where I can see it's low. It transfers a little bit of heat in there, which helps. And then I'm just sort of giving it a little tug and then a little tap at the same time. It's just helping bring some of those lows up a little bit, but with heat as well to control it. It's coming out really nice actually. I'm really surprised it's coming along that quick. I've only been at it for maybe, I guess, an hour now. And this sort of section's, it's pretty close. I've got a big bulge down here though, but I'll address that when I address this part here. But this section here is, it's coming along really, really nice actually. It's close. It's, when I put my contour gauge there, it's not far off actually. So this is where I've sort of got to choose where I finish and stop playing with it. The last thing I want to do is overwork it and just lose all that time on it. So a little bit more dressing up through here, and then I think I'll call it quits. I'll run a cleaner strip wheel over it and clean all these marks up from the Easy Beat and the shrinking, and then I can get a really good feel for it, because at the moment they're rough, so they sort of throw your hand off a little bit. So yeah, that's where we're at now.